Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, Apus Game Engine Delphi Code Review. This is the first of what I would like to do more of webinar formats where we bring experts together to discuss code in depth. In this case, we have Ivan Polyakov, who's going to be talking with us about his Apus Game Engine that he recently made open source and is looking for support through his Patreon page, and Frank Lauer, who is an MVP that has done some game development previously. So we're going to dive into this game engine and discuss game development and some things related to that. Your panel, if you will, today is Ivan, Frank, and myself. Unfortunately, the first few minutes of this were not recorded for some reason, so this is actually being recreated after the fact. But I'm going to just go through some of this, and then we'll go right into Ivan's review of his code. This is a little short video that he made to introduce his Patreon. It was a good way to kind of get an overview and brief introduction to his project.
Hello guys, I'm Ivan Polyakov, an indie games developer from Belarus. Here are some of games I've made: Spectromancer, Astral Heroes. All these games are made with my game engine written in Object Pascal or Delphi language. This engine isn't something like Unity or Unreal, it's just a set of libraries for UI, file formats, rendering, networking, debugging and so on. Most parts are independent and can be used in projects of any kind, not just games. However, this code was always in-house and never positioned as a product for others. If I just publish it as is, it won't be very useful. Additional work is required to make it more usable: documentation, examples, tests. That's why I need your support. If you agree that my work is useful, please support me. By the way, have a look at the goals section. I'm going to publish the source code of some real project, including the Astral Heroes game, both client and server parts. Let's make this possible together.
I found out about Apus Game Engine and Ivan through his Patreon. I thought it was a great idea that he is put up a Patreon so that people that want to can support him in order for him to make his game engine available open source for everybody. And I also like the fact that it was multi-device. The goal of the webinar is to help you understand and discover his game engine, if it's something that might be useful for you. Also to have a technical conversation about game development, some of this lower level code for Delphi. And also, frankly, I'd love to support him and promote him. I already went out and backed his Patreon project and would love to give other people a chance to do that as well if that works for you. If you want to find his game engine or his games, you can find them here. The Spectromancer and Astral Heroes, are two of his more popular games, are available on Steam. Spectromancer is also available on iOS. So you can find those there, or you can find his game engine on GitHub, the examples on GitHub, and his Patreon page. This is a screenshot from Spectromancer and some of the ratings and reviews it got from different sites that evaluated it. It is a card game, like a collectible card game. And then Astral Heroes, which is his more recent one, also a collectible card game, or deck building game, I guess. So this is the structure of the project group for Astral Heroes and the games in general. Is you have a client, a server, so there's components for communication between that. If you have for multiplayer, the two clients communicate through the server. It's HTTP based. There's also a website that provides some overview of the game, what's going on in the game, you can view the chat, etc. And then tools used for building releases and the stat engine. Some of the key concepts is that you want to make minimal dependencies so that you can use just the part you need. So for example, if you just want the sound system, the sound engine, you can use that on other platforms or in other apps without making an app fully based on the entire game engine. This makes it easier to debug, loosely coupled, all the good things for architecture we know about. So he's going to jump into a sample, going through some code. I started recording shortly after he got started, so sorry for the slight jump there. But
so here is the demo. There is a button I can click. There is here's the box, so some UI, and there is a particle that I can emit with right mouse button. There is also a console window. It works. I'll tell about it later. So how it works? This class is a framework class actually. Okay, one moment. Okay. What can you do with this gamification class? You can inherit it, like in this example. You can use it as is. You can copy and edit it for your needs, or you just don't use it and write everything from scratch. How I use it? I inherited it. It override creates scenes. Scenes is a general unit of an application. It's something like Delphi forms or window. So I create a scene. I have one scene, main scene of tMyScene class, and I overwrite it. It's render. Yes, here is it. So render is a procedure where I draw everything. This is a painter. It's a global object. It's a drawing API. So I can draw lines, rectangles, draw text, and so on, everything. And let's check it once again. So here's a mesh of lines, rectangles, hello world text. Here is it. And in inheritance here, there is a basic pre-built code that display the UI. UI, here a button and everything else. When I press a button, it exits, but why? Because it is linked. Here is it. This is an event bus system. How it works. When a button is clicked, there is a signal with this string name is emitted, and it is linked to another signal which tells the engine to terminate. This system is used to link different parts of the game, of the program, without hard callbacks, without use of different units. So this is a system which is used by different components, and it links them together. So one system can emit signals, and the signals are catched as events in different parts of the program. And this can be used also to communicate between different threads. And in this case, this signal is emitted in one thread and captured in another thread. That's how this works. Jim, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm just feeling that I'm alone. Sorry. So here is the main object of the engine, which is widely used.
Actually, there's a couple of questions coming in. So let's go ahead and act. A question here from does it support multiple platforms or is it Windows only?
Yes, it supports multiple platforms, but it supports actually Android and iOS. But all projects I've made for these platforms were quite old, and recently I am working only for Windows. But this code can be used for Android and for iOS. I have implementation for these platforms, but it takes some time to use them, so I can just, you know, it's quite difficult to set up the system, set up debugging, and so on. Not very easy to show.
Narov said is very impressed that you developed the Turbo Delphi as well. It's great to see. You know, how long have you been working on it? I guess how long have you been working on the game engine?
On this engine?
Yes.
This engine was developed since I suppose 2002. 2002 second game.
2002. Yeah. Okay. And does it have a sound? It has a sound engine as well, and is the sound engine multi-platform?
Yes, I have a sound system. I will show you. There are some units like Sound B. It's a wrapper for the bass library. Maybe you know it. Oh, here is it. It's used for Windows. And for Android and iOS, I'm using native players such as Android Media Player and AV Audio Player for iOS. So they can be used to play just sound effects and sound streams, MP3 or OGG, some OGG streams. Okay.
Now you said it's modular. This wasn't a question, but I guess a question I have. Let's say I wanted to have a more robust sound system in my application, but I wasn't really making a game. I can just use your sound engine in my application, right, without implementing the entire game engine?
Yes. The full interface, as you can see, this unit, Sound B, it consists almost no interface. All interface is through the event bus system. So you just emit signals, and this unit is capturing them and execute. So if I want to play some sound, I just one moment. I'll show this how it works. For example, here. Oh, like this. Signal, sound, play music, and music name. That's all. That's all you need to start playing music or playing sound effects.
Is your render called for every frame of rendering, like 60 times a second for 60 frames per second, or is it called only when there's a change?
There is a main loop that renders as fast as you can, but there is a synchronization, so you will be limited to 60 frames. If you want, you can turn it out, turn it off, and get maximum FPS.
So on Windows, you're using the bus engine, and on mobile, the native players. but the native players are unable to play sounds direct from memory or stream memories sounds to the device, I think. So how do you overcome this problem in short boosts of sounds like an explosion? You can't always load the wave file or something from the stream or from the memory to play the sound?
I think there is buffering, so I don't have such problems. I just tell that I want to play sound files, and there is no latency.
Okay.
Okay, let me go back to the presentation.
Yeah, but in a game you have normally have background sound for music, you have some explosions or whatever, and you can play, let's say, 2 or 3 sounds at the same time on Android and iOS?
Yes, exactly. There is an internal limit in Android media player, so I'm using multiple instances of player, because I think it's 1 megabyte of samples.
Okay.
So I'm using just multiple instances. Here are some 3 main objects of the engine. Game, which implements the loop, the main loop. It processes user input, performs all the initialization of OpenGL or DirectX. By the way, I should say that engine supports both DirectX and OpenGL, and you can choose which system you are going to use, or you can use both. Painter, it's a drawing API, and texture manager, TextMan. It's used to allocate textures, images, and manage them. For example, it can use atlases, dynamic atlases, to pack some different textures into bigger textures. So to decrement number of texture switches. And the most useful unit, I mean, mostly used in project units, is engine tools, which is a collection of high-level functions such as load image, draw something, and because it's stored for a global reference of the main objects: game, painter, and TextMan. By the way, image loading functions support also static atlases, so you can pack multiple images in an atlas image and preload this image when the game is loaded. And then when you try to load an image from a file, it captures this call and take the image from the atlas. So it's a transparent system. Well, the next system is UI system, and this is a very important system because the most time, the most complicated part of the game probably is UI. It takes a lot of time to adjust, to configure, to develop it. And the main idea is to separate behavior from visualization, like you have in a browser, for example. So I have a set of controls, but these controls don't know how to draw itself. They don't draw itself. It's a different goal. So the UI system is separated into several units. UI classes is a unit with a set of controls like button, label, combo box, images, and so on. And each control can be inserted into any other control, like children. So there is no any limits. You can make a tree whatever you want. For example, insert an image into button or image into label, no limits. Then UI render is a visualization system. It consists of, it supports different UI styles. So UI style is a visualizing procedure, which knows how to draw each component. For example, how to draw a button in a specific style. And for each control, I specify which renderer should it display it. So UI style can be per control. Each control may have a different style. And the default render style is used to prototyping. For prototyping, it's so all components has default visualization. And UI scene unit is a glue which used to make everything works. It links the screens, the scenes system with the UI system. So it transfers the user input from scenes to UI. And as I mentioned, there are additional UI styles. There are pre-built custom style. It's the name of unit. This style is used to design your UI from scripts. So you don't have to code all the properties, and you can design from textual files. And there are many reasons why you may don't want to give your source code to people who will design the UI and adjust it. Let me show how it works. Here is it. Here is Astral Heroes game, and there are scripts. For example, init, let's say, oh, okay, init campaign. This is a campaign script, campaign screen. I'll run it to show. Okay, here is this screen, and this screen is configured by the script. Here is a text. Here I create elements, controls, and define these properties. And everything this can also be made through a console. Here I can change any properties. For example, I can click on a button and see how, first I select it and I see how it's named, who is the container for it, and see its properties. I can move it using mouse to adjust, or using arrow keys. Okay, I have reset its style to default. This is a default style for button. And this is how it should look like. So all this is declared in the script file. So designer can design the UI without changing the code.
I love that you're using a DOS TurboVision based editor here.
Yes, it's my favorite favorite program, DOS Navigator. Very powerful and very cool.
So Eli asks, in the video you showed moving UI elements around like buttons with the mouse.
Yes.
can you talk more about how that's done, or how do you do that?
I'm pressing Control Alt Win K, and with right mouse button I can move it. It's a debug facility.
Okay.
I mean, even not debug, but more design facility.
Sure.
So,
wow.
So when I am satisfied with properties, I just move these properties to the script file. And then when it is next launched, I have everything set up.
Do you have, this might not be something you want to share, but just curiosity is, someone's asking if you have maybe total installation numbers for all your games, just to see how popular it is?
Number of installation.
Okay. What kind of games can you develop with your engine? Is it, if someone wanted to develop like a platformer or a 3D game or something like that, is that something that your game engine would be
for two-dimensional games, of course, but there is little support for 3D. For example, I can load meshes, animated meshes, even with skeletal animation. I mean, rigid meshes, and display them. For example, let me show you. There is engine demo, and here is it. Oh no, not this example. One moment. I think this one. No, sorry, one moment.
So we all know you're human, we've all been.
I'll switch to the,
wait.
I'll switch to the recent Delphi. This should be easier. One moment, please. Okay, this one. Okay, here is it. Here you can see a rigid mesh with animation, mesh with texture. So this is a 3D.
Do you have collision detection and stuff as well, so that you can
No, I think it's a purpose. I think you should use special libraries for that, and there is no need to have an in-house system for it.
Does the 2D engine have collision detection at all for like building a platform or something like that?
No physics and no collision detection.
Okay.
Just visualization, UI, networking, by the way, sound, and what else? And scripting. So I have shown you the console window, and I'll show a bit more. For example, by the way, here is the shortest demo. There is just 4 lines of code and how it works. Oh, sorry. Just switch. Yes, that is. It's a preload built-in scene, which does nothing but display a spinner. So you can load your resources, perform initialization while the spinner is shown, and then switch to main scene. By the way, you will already have console here. It works. So just 4 lines of code. And I'll show you one more example. This one.
Are the graphics and such, is that something you developed, or do you have an external designer you use?
Sorry?
Do you do your own graphics and design, or do you have another designer that you use?
Currently, no. But in past, yes.
So you make all the graphics you showed us in your game. You draw it by yourself?
No. No, this game is not very recent. It was published 3 years ago. I mean, Astral Heroes. So we outsources, use outsources freelancers to make these graphics. Our team was 2 persons, me and game designer.
Okay.
Can you show us how you composed all the graphics to the main screen together?
Yes, but one moment, I will show you another thing.
No problem, go ahead.
Here is it. This is a demo which draws a circle, and you can click mouse to move the circle. And we have a special, okay, one moment. First of all, in this demo, I don't inherit the T-game application class. I use it as is, and use event handler. I mean this. I mean my bus event bus system to capture the create scenes event and do the job, create the scene. So no inheritance here. It's just an example. Here I have 2 values of T animated value. This is a type for transitions, for values that can change in time. For example, I tell that I want to see X animate to given value, and I want this value to appear in 1 second using a specific easing spline function. That's how it works. And then draw a circle with current value of Cx and Cy. So it's moving smoothly. Now I want to adjust, for example, adjust the color of this circle. What I do? I just use predefined global variables gif1, gc1, and use this assignment. And let's see how this works. Now I can press Ctrl plus tilde, and this is a tweaker scene. I call it tweaker because I can tweak values. And you can see it's changes in real time. And when I am satisfied with the result, I can copy these values to my code here instead of these variables. So this is very convenient to adjust some things and not to run once again and again and again trying to. Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to ask, when you're doing the things in the scripting for the design purposes, are those scripts, is there some sort of step that goes through to compile those, or are those delivered to the end user in a user readable, editable format?
My scripts are executed line per line in source form. They are not compiled. It's a very primitive system, but it works.
So there's no mechanism to obscure them or protect them from modification?
Protect, I think no.
Okay.
You can encrypt them and decrypt online so on. But there is no built-in mechanism. These scripts are useful for modding, so people can build their mods to adjust something and build custom versions. So I think it's more useful to be, so people can make changes.
Yeah, makes sense.
So with this demo, you do the tricks that you click on the screen and the circle is following you. How do you do the animation of the circle on different speeds of hardware, so you can always have the same speed for the animation?
I can calculate the distance and calculate which time I need for the given distance. But right now there is a constant time, 1 second, so speed is different actually. So it is fast and it's slow. The key feature is that I can click fast. For example, when the circle is moving, I can give another destination. So
yeah, but not normally for the steps between point 1 and 2, you calculate the time needed for rendering a scene and calculate the steps between every movement, so that every object moves at the same speed on any given CPU and any given CPU speed.
Yes.
So where do you calculate the delta time for the movement?
Actually, there is no delta time. Everything is hidden is value. Actually, it calculates value based on the time. Here is mighty count, which takes current time and evaluates the proper value for this time. It's actually not just for animation, for moving something. It's for effects. For example, I can show a window with some effect, and this effect should be synchronized, should work in time properly. So this is just an object that can evaluate its value for each given time, for current time or for any other moment of time. Okay.
It looks like what other types of games could you develop with this besides the card type games like you have?
I think there is no specific limit. It's a question of how can it be useful for the particular kind of game? Is it useful for a platform game or for CD shooter game? So that's it. Let me show also one more thing. I said I want to say a few words about networking. I have two networking protocols. One is UDP based, so you can send message to server and receive messages from server using UDP. And another one is HTTP based. So it's more useful when you want to use proxy servers or use typical HTTP server like Nginx, Apache, and so on. And one more feature is localization. I have a real-time string translation, which occurs when you draw the strings. So this is how it works. Let me show. I'm running the game. Okay, you can see all the captions. And when I go options, I can change language, for example, and everything is translated automatically.
Now you have, is it like a lookup table you have of all the different strings in the different languages, or how does that handled?
There is a dictionary file. I can show you how it works. Like this. I have a source string and destination string. And this language is dynamically used when I use text out. Text out function, string substitution is on fly. So every frame when I draw something, when I draw a string, they are translated dynamically. So when I change language in options, I just load a different language file.
Okay.
Do you have a different game that you can show with some animations?
Actually, I have animation in these games. In this game, card animation, I mean. Or you mean character animation?
Character animation, whatever, something that is changing the shape or doing some kind of animation over time. This is all static from me at the moment.
You can see card animation. Here are 3D effects with card rotation. It's actually true 3D with 3D camera, so it's true 3D animation.
I think that we're not seeing the animations because of the way GoToWebinar doesn't grab every frame. Probably they're faster than we're seeing them.
So it's laggy.
Yeah, a little bit of lag, or not lag, but just that GoToWebinar isn't as high a fidelity.
Oh, okay. If I mean animation, I like something like a space game where aliens are crawling all over the place and bullets are flying over the screen and something like that.
Okay, I see. I don't have such games because my specialization is two-dimensional card games mostly. So all my games are like this, pretty much. Currently, I'm working on a 3D strategy game, but I can't show it. There's nothing to show actually right now.
What if do you have any kind of support or example of a animation where something changes shape? Like, for example, if you had like a character walking, right, their legs would appear to be moving independently of the their body, for example, right? I don't know if that makes sense. So instead of just moving a static image across the screen, like you were with the circle or the card, but where something changes over time.
This probably is similar to the engine demo which I shown before. There is a skeletal animation, and there is this animation is independent. So different part of meshes can be independently animated. It's not very obvious when you see this in the demo, but it works. I will open it again.
Yeah, so there's two different types of animations. You can have, let's say, for the walk animation, you can have real 2D or 3D objects that are bound together via bones and something like that. Or you can have, let's say, for a walking animation of a char, 60-20 frames that you can use and render on the 2D screen. It hasn't to be 3D, so you can do the same animation on a 2D screen. Can you show something like that?
Actually, you can create a 3D mesh, but use just two-dimensional. So use 3D technology to achieve two-dimensional effects. I don't have support
Yeah,
for.
so okay, let me ask again. If you have a 2D, if you stick with 2D, you can do two kind of animations. You can have objects which are linked together. You can do some kinematics, reverse kinematics rendering, or you can use images, and for the walk cycle you can use different images for displaying the animation. So like in the old days on Commodore or whatever, you had some kind of sprite engine where you can move 16 objects independently on different parts of the depths of the screen together and make some nice animation. Do your engine have something like the sprite engine?
There is no specific support for sprite engine because I don't see what specific support do you need. You can just draw sprites. You don't have to use classes, for example, for sprites. Yes, you can just draw them like you want. You can animate them, no problem, no problem. You can pack them into Atlas textures, so it's no problem here. I have a particle system, so you can draw many objects at once. So you can put many sprites in one texture and then draw 1,000 or 10,000 sprites at once. Yes, it's supported. And there is a game object system, but it's probably too difficult to explain it right now. The system is used to put objects on screen, and this object can be animated. I can show this probably once again. Let me show in Astral Heroes game. Each card is a game object, but not on the card. Let's see on these digits, for example.
I will comment. Adam just shared a link in the chat with the to a YouTube video of one of the games, and when you're watching the YouTube video, you can see the subtleness of the animations and effects a lot better. So check that out if you want to see a better example of what's going on there.
These numbers can enlarge, can scale, can move, so they are not just simple numbers just drawn. These are actually game objects, but probably it's not so clearly visible. So sorry about that.
What kind of settings, or for example, physical forces can you apply on the particles? For example, changing speed, or how do you customize their behavior of the particles?
Okay, I will open this example with particles. Oops, sorry. Sometimes this happens.
Only when you're doing a presentation has been my experience.
Yes, yes, probably. Here is it. I just feel an array of particles, and I handle them. So here is fade-off, movement, deceleration. Here's dx and dy is a speed. So I just decelerate them and apply gravity like this. There is no specific support for physics, for collision. Particles are just physical points.
Okay. Do you have any plans to add any sort of basic collision detection? For example, just like rectangle overlap or pixel collision or anything like that in the future?
I think it's better to use existing libraries for that, specific libraries.
Are there any existing libraries you'd recommend to use with this?
I think 2D box is the best.
Okay, great.
Sorry?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, this probably almost the end. Yes.
So everybody can go out and get the source code and the examples right there and try this out. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Are there any questions?
Been asking them as we went along here. If there's any other questions that I didn't ask yet, please do feel free to answer them or ask them now, and I will ask them again. I do have one question, and I didn't notice it might have been on there. What is the license that is used for these the open source ones?
The license is BSD3. So I want the people to be able to take everything, to take every function, every part of code and rewrite it and reuse. Because I don't like the license which requires to take the whole thing.
Great, yeah, very nice license. David, David, if I missed your question, I apologize. Let me scroll back through. If I didn't ask your questions, it's possible I didn't see them, or oh yeah, here I see your question, David. Sorry. You showed both developing the web apps and the desktop apps. What kind of browser is required for the web pages? Are those HTML5 compliant? And yeah, can you talk more about the web development you did with your engine?
Okay, what about web development? I have a framework actually for websites. Here is it. It's a template processing mechanism, and I wrote. I have an example, which is okay. One moment. Here is it. One moment, please. I'll find. Here are the template files. You can insert one template into another template and so on. So the web page is built by this template engine. And the web application is just a SCGI client that process requests by building this template.
And
I have an article. Actually, I have an article explaining this the system. This article is in Russian, but you can easily translate it to English automatically, so you can understand how it works.
Great. Is the multiplayer? You have both AI and you're playing in real time against other players. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so they're interacting with each other. Do you do matchmaking on the server side then, or how does that handled?
Everything is calculated on the server.
Okay. Hopefully I got your questions answered. I saw there was a chat as well that you can chat with other players. So if there's something I missed, David, please expand on that. Do you have plans to support Mac OS or Linux?
Support for Linux?
Yes. Or Mac
No,
OS.
no, not yet. But I really want to add this support.
Okay. Does your particle engine allow for independent of all the elements in a nonlinear simultaneous way as it renders the frame on completion of elements? So similar to old-fashioned sprite engine.
I don't understand what you mean by independent.
I'm guessing updating the.
I think like something like the old games Galaga or some shooters on where you put in the coins in the old days.
Oh yeah, so it would look like, I mean, based on what I saw in your demo, each individual particle, you can change the movement and behavior of the particles independently. So yeah, they should be able to do that, it sounds like.
Yes, each particle is independent.
How is the networking between the client applications handled? I saw you have a networking module. Is that going through like a REST interface, or is it using its own UDP sockets, or what is the mechanism for that?
In the latest game, I mean Astral Heroes, I'm using HTTP-based protocol, which transfers messages.
And then all those messages go through the server, or do they go directly between players?
No, they all go through the server, and server can dispatch them to an opponent. Everything goes through the server.
There's a question here, if you could talk about the 3D strategy game you're working on. I realize it's early on, but if you could talk any about what's going on, that would be interesting.
Sorry, could you?
You mentioned that you're working on a 3D strategy game. Can you tease us with some more details around what you have planned?
Yes, it's an experimental game. I'm really unsure what will I have with it. This game is very unusual. It's the core idea is scheduled gameplay. So many people play not when. Okay, let me formulate this one. For example, you can play from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. On Monday, Thursday, and Friday. That's where your game session is running. So the key problem of real-time strategy games is that you can't play 24 hours per day. Yes. So the solution is to split the very long session into small sessions and run them by schedule. That's the core idea. So the idea is to make a complicated real-time strategy game with very long session.
Interesting. Okay. So you would have a certain schedule of when you would be playing. Interesting. So the question here, that your engine appears event-driven. It says other game engines have a main game loop which renders the screen a certain number of times per second. How does that work with Apus? Is there a main game loop? It's not something we see because of the abstraction, or how does the rendering take place compared to the events?
I have the main loop rendering. I'll show you. It's here. Here is render frame. So we just process the scenes and combines, renders the scenes and combine the image of the screen, of the window, of the screen, if you're in full screen. So very simple.
Everything is running in the same thread, or can you do multi-threading for some calculation stuff between the renderer?
Rendering is single-threaded, but you can spawn additional threads using this game object and do some calculation, for example, AI, physics, animations, and so on, and communicate using events or just direct communication anywhere, anything you want. So, for example, I run in AI and on different threads.
In your scripting engine, you said it's pretty basic, but does it have any kind of conditionals or loops or assignments, anything like that in it?
It has conditionals, but it doesn't have loops right now.
Okay.
But I can add them probably. I'd rather add functions. They are not loops, probably.
Is there anything you would like to see change in Delphi that could make your job in developing this game engine and game development easier or better in the future?
Maybe I'm looking forward for managed records. This will be really helpful.
Ah, yes, that coming in 10.4, very exciting. I'm excited about that too.
Because I'm using in many places, I'm not using classes, but use records or objects. Very convenient for me. But sometimes it's very limited because, well, you know, you need some tricks for initialization and for keeping them.
Yes. Yeah, I love records. I mean, it's one of those things. Records are lighter weight, generally speaking, than objects. Frequently, that's not a huge deal, but I do like using records for creative things where you're doing interesting things with types, and the adding the managed records to that is certainly going to be a huge improvement, so that you can do more with initialization and such. So I'm really excited about that feature as well.
I'm widely using records for things like structures, hashes, and so on. I prefer them because I don't need to explicitly create and destroy. You just declare and that's it. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Are you aware of the dynamic array enhancements that Marco blogged about? There's the question here about that.
I don't understand. What about dynamic arrays? Should I be aware?
I'm not sure. That just was the question.
I did not see Markuk's blog. Perhaps we could have a link for it.
Yeah, it's in the chat, or it's in the question window here. I'll put it in the. I'll put it in Skype for you too. It was in XE7, so it was a while back.
Oh, XE7. Okay.
Okay. Oh, nice, nice. Yes, I know about this. Yes, but you can see most of my code works in Turbo Delphi, so it's very old system. Current version of the engine isn't compatible with Turbo Delphi, but Still, I have to support some old code.
Okay, yeah, Eli is just pointing out that you're exactly that he saw you're doing set lengths and stuff, but so it's great to see that you are updating it to work with the latest versions of Delphi. And I'll work with you to get you an enterprise license so that you can add Linux support for everybody that wants to do Linux development with your game engine. So that'll be good for people that are wanting to do that, since you're wanting to add that functionality, since that's not available in the Community Edition.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Hopefully I got everybody's questions answered that came in here, or everybody's questions asked at least. If I missed your question, you can certainly follow up with Evan on via email or on Patreon.
I'll be glad to answer.
Yeah. Craig is asking if it works with Lazarus Free Pascal as well.
Yes, initially it works, but right now I'm not sure that the latest version is fully compatible, but it's mostly compatible. It should work. If it doesn't work, I'll fix this soon.
Yeah, so Craig, open it up in Lazarus, and if it doesn't work, I guess you can do a pull request and make a change.
Yes.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for taking your time. I know this was a little bit beyond your comfort zone for what you wanted to do, but I think it was hopefully useful for people to see some code in action, as it were. This is, real code that's out in use in the real world, and have a conversation about that. I got a couple people here saying that they're gone out and supporting you on Patreon now, which is great. I'm very excited about that. I love seeing projects like this where, those of us that can and want to contribute on Patreon do, and then everybody gets the benefits of having access to it as you're providing open source. So great stuff. Let's see, there's another question. Another question just came in here. Are there vector-like functions in the engine, for example, drawing lines or shapes, etc.?
Yes, I have draw lines and circles and whatever else.
Okay, great. A couple questions asking about how to get in touch with you. There is actually, if you want to bring up the slides again, you can show the slide with your email address on it, I think, is the last slide. Also, the slides are in the handout section. You can grab those there. There's his email address as well. Or if you go to the Patreon page and back him on Patreon, you can contact him through there, which is what I recommend. Introducing in a DX, a simple 2D game with nice UI that everyone would like to play, edit, cross-platform. Yes, so there are in Get It, Oleg, there are some sample games already that you can download and use, and then I will work with even as well to get these in there too, or the game engine or some samples or something along that, what makes sense in Get It as well, so that people can just start developing games with Delphi. I'm gonna go off track here a second. I love Delphi, that is such a great flexible system, right? It's a general purpose system. You could do whatever you want to with it. I get people say, oh, can I develop games with it? It's like, well, it's not designed for game development, but you can develop games. And we see, like the work Evan's done here, and other people have done with game development as well. You can do games with Delphi, especially when you have this reusable library you can use. So yeah, great stuff. I'm really excited to see this. Gaming, it's one of those things, a lot of people like game development, but unfortunately most of us don't get a chance to do that as our main job. So having some samples like this where we can play with it on the weekend and explore new things is always fantastic. Yeah, all the links are in the chat window and in the handout. If you go to the handout, there's a PDF you can download with the slides, and they're up on the screen now as well. A lot of good feedback here. Thank you for your time and for your work on this game engine. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next for you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Frank, for being here and helping pay attention and keep answering good questions. Did you have any questions before we go, Frank?
No, I think all my questions are answered. So, but the funny thing you just mentioned was the question about, can you do this with Delphi? This is the funniest question I've ever heard, and I hear it every year. And this is so funny because my answer is, of course, you can do everything with Delphi.
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly.
if you sing, you can only sing, do the only thing in C or C++. No, you can do the same in Delphi too, no problem. And that's why it's always so funny. Everybody's asking, can you do this with Delphi?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I get a lot is people are like, oh, I want to do X with Delphi, but I don't want to buy this third-party component or use this third-party library. It's like, well, that component or library was written in Delphi, so you can do that without that library, but you have to implement it yourself. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, you got to write some code. You know?
Yeah, one thing from my point of view is not, you cannot do with Delphi is PS4 or PS5 games, I think.
Yeah.
But there might be a way with Free Pascal, isn't it? I don't know. Never tried.
I think
or
so.
Xbox. Yeah, that's one leap we need to fix.
Yeah, there are certainly additional platforms and stuff. And I know I am always the one that is going to product management saying, hey, can we support this platform or can we do this? And, you know, so it's a matter of we have, you know, limited resources internally for not only adapting the compilers, but for all the libraries and stuff. And
yeah, still hoping for ARM on Linux.
Yes, me too. Andrew just said,
Linux
in fact,
on ARM.
you can do more with Delphi than with C++. Perhaps.
Yes, I agree. No, this is also not true because I think Delphi, C++, native C, I think both or every language that is able to compile direct to binary file could do anything.
Yeah, and so as far as your comment about PS4, technically you could use Delphi to write a compiler that could compile for PS4. So you could use Delphi to build the tools you need to use to target PS4, but it's a long way of getting there.
you can write a header loader in C# and load a Delphi binary and execute this. But I think the problem is the SDK. But well, that's beyond the topic of the today's session, I think.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Based on the feedback I'm seeing here, this is a good format. Hopefully, we'll be doing more of this, where I'll be finding people that we can get on and they can walk us through the code and share things and such. And yeah, fantastic. I wish you well on your game engine and everything. So. And Craig just messaged to say that he believes that PS4 is x86, so you probably could. More webinars like this.
If you overcome the licensing.
Yeah.
By the way, when we made SpectrumAnswer for iOS, there was no support officially for iOS, neither in Free Pascal and neither in Delphi. But somehow we made it.
Wow. Yeah, I've talked to a few people that, for example, before Delphi had Unicode, they're like, okay, well, I'll just implement my own Unicode, or before, yeah. So, for example, FMX Linux was originally developed by a third party. We made the compiler available, and then there was someone else like, oh, well, I'll just make FireMonkey work for Linux. So you can get there yourself if you want to. It's just a matter of time and determination. So, all right. Great. So thank you so much, everybody. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I appreciate everybody being here and look forward to seeing you on for more sessions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, and you should get an email with the recording. It'll also be posted on our community site as well if you need to catch the replay or whatever.